All right, hello everyone. I'm just going to jump right into it for the sake of time. My name is Matthew Barden. Like my other colleagues who have already presented and discussed a little bit today, I'm an extern. I go to LSU working on my PhD in experimental music and digital media, and then I also teach a few courses in this digital design and emergent media pathway at Denham Springs High School. One little downside to doing that, there's not many, but it's just that I, have to physically be in the school to teach the classes, and when school ends at 2:23 and then the presentation starts at, 2:45, well, anyone who's been in Baton Rouge at 3 o'clock knows what that traffic is like. So hopefully you'll never see this video. But if I'm not quite there right when it's time for my portion of the presentation, we've got this video just to help walk you all through it. So I think that's just about everything I've got there. What I'm going to be discussing is just some basic ideas in modeling physics in video games. So this takes the DDEM pathway and is combining it with some of the engineering aspects of STEM, some of the mathematic aspects of STEM, and then just the artistic elements of just what we're doing with that math and elements. So specifically, I'm going to look into modeling some movement and physics-based interactions based off that. This is very common in video games in that industry. We can take this a step further if you are interested and actually make the computer make predictions based off of, the various inputs that you give it. And kind of at the core, that's really what's happening, except these predictions are, mathematically perfect. Just because really, and I may trigger a bunch of people by saying this, but really, physics at its core is essentially just applied math. We take some mathematical relationships between some things, we can see that and apply it in the real world and get a very predictable outcome. I've got a few common equations and physical aspects that tend to show up in a few of the classes here in the DDEM pathway. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we can see that specifically an example, in the first law of thermodynamics in a closed system, any change in energy is equal to, after the reaction is equal to the, any changes in, heat energy given off or absorbed and, changes in kinetic. Basically, energy is neither created or destroyed; it's only changed. The force of gravity is reliant on math, of your weight or your mass. I'm sorry, and the the gravitational constant of whatever other thing you're wanting to determine the gravity for. Velocity, changes in speed over changes in time, stuff like that. I'm not going to go through it all right now, just for the sake of time. But what I am going to go through is this bit of code right here. So basically, if you've ever played a video game, kind of at the core of what's going on is that the games are using sometimes 2D, sometimes 3D sprites to represent various items and things and people and whatever they need to represent. I've got a very basic example where it's just colored polygons, but it's the same thing at the basic level. So when we're programming how these objects work, we can model or in some cases deliberately change or ignore laws of physics in order to create these unique items in our game. Um, and in fact, in many video games, they tweak the physics just a bit or sometimes drastically, either to make unique gameplay or to make the gameplay flow a bit more like a video game. Some of the things I'm going to show off are that you can, very easily apply friction to stuff to make things slow down and adjust their speed. That energy or inertia is conserved when things happen. You can do gravity, and you can set up any other kinds of audio and video changes in your game, which is where some of the artistic stuff comes in, with just a little bit of, thinking, what do I want to do? And then applying the math for that. So I've got this example right here. Let me just pull that up in another tab. Um, and I'm actually going to hide my me because otherwise I'm just going to, uh, you know, not show up. Let's see. And there I go. All right, so I've got this bit of code that I put together, and this is based off of multiple smaller assignments in the Programming Digital Media course. I've just kind of combined a few common elements. Uh, so I'm just going to leave this here for a second and kind of walk you through what is happening. So the first thing you'll notice, this kind of purple square, that's that player character that we can control. Gravity is constantly pulling them down to the ground. A few other things. I've implemented a simulation of time just by moving a yellow circle across the sky and making the sky color change based on its position, so we can very easily replicate time. I've put some little randomly placed boxes around on the screen, so if I refresh this, we see that there, and the player character can just like the ground, in physics, you can't move through something normally. So I've got this set up so the player interacts with the box. Lastly, I've got these two larger rectangles here. Whenever the player character interacts with the blue one, it teleports them to the orange one and vice versa. Otherwise, there's just some sound effects that are going to play whenever something happens. So if I use my arrow keys to move this around, the player moves, but then the friction slows them down so they don't move forever. We can jump, and every time I jump, we hear a sound effect. And then every time we hit something, we also play that sound effect. So you notice that I touched the orange one, we heard a different sound, and then I came out of the blue rectangle. So if I do that again, we can do that. And you'll notice that if I'm jumping up, whenever I collide with that orange rectangle, I'll still be moving up just a little bit when I come out of the blue. So you see that inertia is conserved. And if I were to kind of jump a whole lot, you can still see I was still moving towards the left when that happened. So just to kind of really briefly, for the sake of time, show this up, I've got just all this happening here in this code. It's in the slides. You can just pull this up and look through this at your heart's content. But essentially, we're just, moving that acceleration, that bit of gravity on the player at all times. We're making the portals when, telling it to start the sound whenever we interact with the ground, things like that. Here's the teleport of, well, if the teleporter's here, we're going to switch it over there, vice versa. It's very small, localized applications of, when you boil it down to it, mostly fairly simple math. If you wanted super accurate and super in-depth modeling, this would require more complex math and more just more powerful computers, but just at the basic level, it's all relatively simple applications. The last part of my portion of the presentation was just to show a few examples of some of these kind of real-world physics simulations, some in video games, some just simulations to simulate. I'm not going to do that just because of copyrights on YouTube, and you can just play it in the slides in the presentation. That's going to be it for me. Hopefully I didn't go on for too long, but I'm going to end it here. So I will see you all the next time that I see you. So that's my normal ending, but I couldn't find my end streaming button. I will see you all.